On this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Roundball Australia podcast network, the action never stops despite the fact it is the off-season. We've got coaches getting jobs, championships being won, squads being announced, and transfers aplenty. My name is Poletti. Joining me, as always, is Burke. And Burke, it feels like it's been forever since we've done a podcast between international windows and time off and everything else going on, but we're back for a full-length episode this week.
It really does feel like it's been a very long time. It can't have been more than like 3 weeks, right?
Time is an illusion.
It is actually. So I don't know why I'm worried. Actually, we podcasted yesterday and the day before that too. Why not?
Yes. Of course. Why not, indeed. We've got plenty to talk about today, so we'll get right into it. Now, we had hoped to get this one out of the way a little bit earlier than what we have, but timings just haven't quite lined up as well as we would have hoped. The idea being that while there were multiple coaching vacancies, to discuss some female candidates for A-League women's jobs, given I think the most female coaches in the A-League women there have ever been in the season were 4, and that was in a 10-team competition, but most of them have only had 1 or 2, or I don't believe there's ever been a season where there's been none, but research is also quite sketchy, given some of the record keeping in the history of the A-League women's competition. One of those spots, or one of those vacancies, has now been filled. Theo Siunias has been named as Adelaide's A-League women's coach on a 2-year full-time deal with an option to extend. This comes off the back of Adrian Stenter's departure to join Adelaide United's men's program as an assistance coach. Siunias has over a decade of coaching experience in the NPL in South Australia, proven track record of developing young players, and a focus on fostering a strong team culture and connecting with the community that closely aligns with the strategic direction of Adelaide United and reflects the club's vision for the future of the A-League women's side. Look, I have some thoughts about this appointment as well. I mean, I'm hosting a podcast, so I would hope I'd have thoughts about this. Adelaide seemingly only wanted, like they wanted to focus on a local coach, and my limited knowledge of the South Australian football scene has told me, in addition to some people I've talked to, that there aren't a lot of female coaches running around in South Australia at the moment at the NPL levels in either the men's or women's competition or the state league competition, so kind of hamstrung with the criteria of wanting a local coach, that it essentially had to be a male. They didn't want to look beyond the South Australian borders. I've also had sources tell me that at least 3 other candidates have turned down the job before Siunias was appointed. One of these is Michelle Estella, but this one was publicly acknowledged by the club, so there were at least 2 other candidates that have turned down the job. So Theo Siunias was not the first choice for Adelaide Burke, but he's the one they've got.
That is very interesting. I did not know that they had people turn down their offers. Yeah, it's going to leave a lot to think about if Adelaide isn't able to back up the great season that they had last season. I always go to say last year, but it's not last year because it's technically also this year. Oh, Australian weather and sporting schedules, you'll be the end of me. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Very interesting.
It will be. Look, we all want to see success Adelaide. In fact, I was successful Adelaide. In fact, I think we all want all the teams to be successful, unless, of course, it's you with Sydney FC.
Of course.
But that's a story for another day, which we've discussed many times, so I don't even know why I said that. But with the hiring of Siunias, there's now just one vacancy in the A-League women's ranks, and that is the Central Coast Mariners as of the time of recording, which is following M. Husband's departure to the Matildas setup as an assistant coach to Joe Montemuro. Look, technically, there is two with the Wellington Phoenix job currently being held by interim head coach Amy Shepherd, and we've discussed previously on this podcast who is the lead candidate to take that job. So at this stage, we are, with Kat Smith at Western United, we are looking at a situation where, again, there's going to be two or less female coaches in the league at this stage. That could get as high as 3 if the Mariners choose to hire a female coach once again. And we're going to have a look at some of the candidates today for that position, just because, well, no one else is doing it, and there are female coaches aplenty ready to take the step up into the A-League women competition. And I'll kick us off with Tiana Gauci. So Tiana Gauci is currently the assistant coach under Stephen Peters at Perth Glory in the competition, and she's also working as a community development officer for the club. Previously the head coach and technical director of NWS Spirit in the NPL Women's New South Wales competition, and the head of football at Mamre Anglican College. NWS Spirit finished 9th in 2022 NPL Women's season before finishing 3rd in the 2023 NPL Women's season, and her side was eliminated from finals by Stephen Peters' MacArthur Rams side while they were in the middle of their three-peat run of grand final victories. Her sides played some very good and very technical football during her time in charge, particularly in that 2023 season, and I certainly think the Mariners could do a lot worse than Tiana Gauci. I think she has a very good technical football mind. I'm not too sure of the setup within NWS Spirit, but I'd imagine, given that she was the technical director of the women's program at the club, that she also would have had some semi-regular discussions with the men's technical director at the club in David Perkovich, whose side currently sit on top of the NPL men's competition in New South Wales, having been promoted a couple of seasons ago and sort of having some middling results. Perkovich is a coach I have a lot of time for and a lot of respect for. I very much like the way his sides play football, so there's probably that experience there as well. But yeah, I think Tiana Gauci could be one of the candidates there. Burke, will head down to Victoria now for one of the other candidates, and one you are quite familiar with.
Yeah, so another potential option, and I really stress potential because I think she really enjoys working in Victoria, is Caitlin Friend, who's the current head coach of the Bulleen Lions. She's been there for, I think, 5 or 6 seasons now, and been very successful with them, winning a couple of premierships and championships and the like. She's also an assistant coach with the Future Matildas right now, and a couple of years ago created the Elite Female Football Program that she runs to promote development amongst female players. She's had some great coaches in on that as well. Steph Catley was there just recently, actually doing some training sessions with some players that were in that. Yeah, Caitlin Friend has been very successful with Bulleen and in Victoria in general. She's coached in a couple of other places as well before Bulleen. Yeah, I don't think you wouldn't be doing yourself a disservice by hiring Caitlin Friend. You'd just have to actually, hire her. You'd have to offer her something pretty great to get her out of Victoria.
Yes. I've heard that before. The Victorians don't want to leave Victoria. We'll come back to New South Wales for now, and we'll go back to the NPL Women's New South Wales competition with the current head coach of the MacArthur Rams in Victoria Guzman. She has a long-standing history of jobs and is well respected, including the Football New South Wales Institute, which I still sad about. I always liked going to commentate and watch Institute games while they were in the competition. Westfield Sports High, which seems to just produce so much talent. Is one of those elite sporting schools. She's also involved with the Future Matildas. The head of football at the Macarthur Rams, Paul Cotte, stated on her signing, with 5 seasons of involvement with the Football New South Wales Institute program and a coaching role with the Future Matildas, Victoria is well acclaimed in the women's football landscape. Now, the start of this season has been a little bit of a struggle for the Rams, but that is probably to be expected with the departure of Stephen Peters, who really stamped his authority on their program in the half a decade that he was there. Transitioning to a new coach after all that success never comes easy. Departure of key players, as well as just, I don't want to say the inability to recruit A-League women talent, but more... some of the stalwarts that you've come to know and love from the Macarthur Rams if you've been watching the Football New South Wales women's the NPL Women's New South Wales competition for quite some time. As Burke, you have a friend with you.
Yeah, this is Dante. I am cat sitting Dante for the next couple of weeks. He's only 6 months old, so he's very inquisitive and also not scared of anything, which is cute but also terrifying. So if you see him crawling about and making a little nuisance of himself, that's who that is. He's very cute.
We love a good pet appearance here on the Dubcast, as do our viewers. So you look at the way that Macarthur Rams have had to set up this year. A lot of transfers, a lot of player turnover, new coach. They have improved as the season has gone on, and to be fair as well to Guzman, the side, even in defeat, have been playing quite some good football in the earlier stages of the season. I was commentating Northern Tigers versus Macarthur Rams at North Turramurra Recreation Area, a game which the Rams lost 6-1, but they looked quite good at stages throughout that game before the Northern Tigers just began to took it away. So she's an incredibly well respected coach and someone who maybe isn't looking right now, but if she is for an A-League women opportunity, it's certainly one of the coaches that could make an impact on the competition, particularly given that she's sort of taking over from a very successful coach already in NPL New South Wales, and you'd have to do the same thing in the A-League women, at the Mariners at least, given you'd be taking over from M. Husband and the success there. But for the last name we're going to discuss in detail, Burke, I'll head back to Victoria now with Helen Winterburn.
Yeah, so Helen Winterburn was an inaugural assistant coach, I should say, with Western United when they first came into the A-League Women's. And she's now currently working in junior development for Football Australia and the Australian Institute of Sport. Sorry, I know how to talk. That's why I'm on a podcast. The Gen 32 program there.
Yeah, look, for me, Winterburn's been around the competition. She knows what to expect. She knows all the circumstances to go with it. By all accounts, I can't imagine why she wouldn't want to crack at a top job if it became available. But again, could this just be a case of, someone not wanting to leave Victoria after having settled in there for the last couple of years?
It's a great place to live. What can I say?
I'll take your word for it. So yeah, those are just sort of look, Western United have obviously had some success during their time. They've made finals. I believe every year they've been in the competition, if memory serves me correctly. Cat Smith is there at the moment. You had Mark Torcaso, was the inaugural coach before he left to go coach the Philippine women's national team. So, it's a program and a team with a lot of expectations. You could probably do a lot worse, again, as I said, than Helen Winterburn, if you were looking at a head coach. But, it could just be a situation of, is Gosford a little bit too far? How does that fit in with work? All those sorts of things. Because, not every coaching gig is a full-time job in the A-League women's competition, unlike, places like Adelaide, and the Wellington Phoenix and whatnot. So, yeah, look, those are some of the names that we're looking at a little bit in depth. There are other names. You've got someone like a Danielle Brogan, who's stepped down as Perth Soccer Club NPL women's coach in WA prior to this season. For family reasons, she was there for, I believe it was 5 years off the top of my head. So whether she's interested in an A-League women job, it could be another question entirely. I mean, if you're stepping down for family reasons, that might suggest that you're not prepared to pick, pack your family up and move them to the other side of the country. Kath Cannulli, previous coach of the Western Sydney Wanderers, is she interested in a return? Is a 3/4 of the year role for her? Anything that she would want to know. She's working as a commentator. She's doing all these sorts of academy sorts of things. So, could that be an option? And then depending on whether she's going to retire or not, a name who I think is basically smack bang in line, no questions asked for a job, Burke, Melissa Barbieri.
Yeah, I think Melissa Barbieri could walk into any job that she wanted, really. Obviously, it's a lot easier to walk into a job when it's vacant, but I do think she could just walk into any job if she wanted to, anywhere within the sport. Yeah, she's great. She actually does NPLW commentary here in Victoria when she wants to, I guess. Yeah, so she keeps busy in the off season.
Yeah, she's also currently goalkeeping coach for Melbourne City's A-League women's side as well. In addition to being one of the goalkeepers in the squad, I'm not quite sure how that works. I
don't think we need to know. She can keep her secrets.
No. Bubs, it can do what she wants. She's been around long enough. She knows exactly what she's doing. And the day that she retires will truly mark the end of an era in Australian domestic football. But, as I said, I'm sure she'll be walking into a job if and when she wants it, where she wants it. Maybe even unseating a current coach. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, Burke.
No, not at all.
So that is our sort of little coaching chat, looking at some of the female candidates for the Mariners job, which, again, as of the time of recording, remains vacant. All these something new seems to be dropping every day relates to A-League women, so it wouldn't surprise me if before this publishes tomorrow morning the Mariners announce their coach and no one is aware of it. But as of the time of recording, it is currently vacant. If there's any coaches that we've missed that you think deserve a shout out, by all means, put them into the comment section. We'll be happy to discuss them on a future episode as well, as best as we can. But we are going to move on to our transfer chat segment. There's been a lot since we last recorded a full episode, so we're not going to go through all of them, but we have picked out some key notes that we wanted to go over. We've picked 3 each, and Burke, you can kick us off.
Yeah, so it feels like everyone and their mother has been transferred in the last couple of weeks, which they kind of have, especially if you're Western Sydney Wanderers. If you somehow missed the news, Western Sydney Wanderers have lost an entire starting 11's worth of players. So make of that what you will.
Yes, and there is a chance you would have missed it because the Wanderers sent the press release out half an hour before a Matildas game kicked off. So there is a very good chance you would have missed it.
There's also a good chance they wanted you to miss it. But
I'm not going to comment, but
let's not get into that.
So that very lengthy list of outs included Madison McComiskey, Sienna Silvesca, Amelia Cassar, who at that point had already been announced as having been signed by Sydney FC on a 3-year contract. Gemma Ferris, Paige Hayward, Talia Capitanellis, Maya Lobo, Iaceno, Keely Segovcic, and Bronte True. I believe Sophie Harding was part of a different announcement, and she is transferred to Fort Lauderdale in the USL, which presents an entirely different discussion point, which is also on my list of players to discuss. Burke, I can't claim credit for this discussion point. I do have to give credit to Teo Palazzari from the Gantry podcast, which covers the NPL men's and New South Wales women's competitions up here. He raised the idea around not only just Sophie Harding's transfer, but Madison McCormick's transfer as well. That, you know, you've got the likes of USL coming in, you've got the NSL in Canada as well. But he also brought up sort of a name that a lot of people probably haven't heard for a while in Emma Ilioski, who is sort of one of the first people to go overseas that isn't really on like a Matilda's radar, because we sort of, I guess, as a collective, sort of like, oh, if we're expecting players to go overseas, it's because they're on the Matilda's radar, they're trying to get game time, they're trying to improve themselves. But I mean, they're also going overseas because they can get full-time contracts and get paid to play football and do a lot of other things. Like, I know Emma Ilioski is involved with some very cool stuff off the pitch. And, you know, the USL sort of came out of nowhere in the last couple of years, the NSL starting this year. I mean, there have been some A-League women players in the past, Americans in particular, who've come over here that we've sort of, you know, like, because there's a competition that was running at the time where it's just kind of like, yeah, this is a dub player we expect to see her all the time, and it's not the case anymore. And with Sophie Harding, it's an overseas challenge, it's a new challenge, she's sort of this fringe Matilda. I think she got called into the one camp under Gustafsson, and that's sort of been her only experience so far. But, you know, like, are we going to lose more of these sorts of players that are fringe Matildas or not even in Matilda's consideration, with all these leagues popping up that are better financially backed and invested in?
I think you've answered your own question. I mean, if you refuse to pay the players are going to go where they can get paid. Not to start a whole other conversation, but we do live in a capitalist society, and I don't see that one changing anytime soon, no matter how much I would like it to.
As much as we might want it to change.
Yeah. So, yeah, people need to live, and to live, you need to have money, and if they can get money elsewhere, they're gonna go elsewhere. So I don't think this is the last we'll see of these losses. And yeah, unless people want to start taking this seriously, it's just going to keep happening. We were warned about it when the USL first popped up because we immediately lost some players. I think it was Cannon Clough from Canberra
Yes, that's exactly the name I was thinking of.
They announced that and she was like, I'm on the next plane, guys. It's been real, but I'm going home. And fair enough. Yeah. And she wrote about that, how she was like, yeah, I can make decent money and I can live at home. So I'm going to do that. It was in the...
It's a no-brainer, right?
I think it was in the PFA Players Report from the end of that season. I want to say it was the 23-24 season.
Yeah, that sounds about right, yes.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, somebody out there. But yeah, until people get paid, you're going to lose them. It's just the way the world works. It
is. We do know that the CBA is due to expire at the end of the next season, to the end of the 2025-26 season. So maybe something happens there with PFA negotiations with the APL.
Loki, they should all go on strike. Do it again. The Matildas did it. You guys can do it too. I always support a strike. I love a union.
Yes, we all love a union. I was going to throw it back to you, but speaking of unions, because you've just given me the best segue possible, the Goalkeepers Union, Burke, have lost all their membership with Sydney FC from last season. So Jasmine Black, Talia Franco, Beth Mason-Jones, and Brianna Edwards have all departed the Sky Blues. Black, Mason-Jones were part of a multiplayer announcement of a release. Of course, Jasmine Black did reveal on the Dubcast that she was already going to college when we did interview with her. So that one was expected. Talia Franco was the first of those to be announced not long after the conclusion of the season. But it was supposed to be Bree Edwards and their two new signings in Heather Hines, who left Houston Dash in the NWSL to take up this opportunity. Quite early, I might add, given that season doesn't kick off, or preseason doesn't start till September, and she announced this like before the transfer window had even opened. So contract, ended there with the Houston Dash. So clearly she wanted to come to Sydney FC. And then, of course, 17-year-old Sydney University goalkeeper and young Matilda's goalkeeper as well in Sofia Fante as a player I've been quite impressed with this season, having commentated a lot of Sydney University games. And if you keep an eye on the Dubcast YouTube channel, either later this week or early next week, I'm going to be putting together a little bit of analysis video about Sofia Fante's season and what Sydney FC fans can expect from her. So keep an eye out on that one. But I mean, the one that sort of came as a shock in terms of the departures was Bree Edwards. She was signed by Sydney FC on a 2-year contract. She wasn't in any of the initial departure lists, and then I believe it was just randomly dropped on Tuesday night last week. When we recorded that the club had come to a mutual agreement, mutual termination of her contract. And maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think she's signed anywhere else yet. I don't think any of that's been announced or anything like that. Which, I mean, on one hand, I know for a fact that Sydney FC put a lot of blame, might not be the right word, but they looked at the goalkeeping as a big problem with their side last season. They've completely turned over the goalkeeper room, and so they've only got 2 goalkeepers on contract, an NWSL, player in Heather Hines and 17-year-old Sofia Fante. But I mean, I don't understand why you would sign a player to a 2-year deal, then release her after not even playing double-digit games with the club, given that she is a Kiwi international, a look football fern, and she is a very good goalkeeper. There are some flaws with her game, and I'll be the first to say that. Disclosure for those who haven't worked it out by now or unaware, I am a huge fan of Bree Edwards. I very much like her as a goalkeeper. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like it.
Fair. Don't need to say any more than that. Yeah, very odd situation. I'm very interested to see where she shows up next, because honestly, she has shown a lot of potential as a keeper, and I don't think she was that bad for Sydney. I think Sydney had like at least 7 different problems happening all at once, and I feel like the goalkeeping was maybe one of the smaller ones of those problems. But I'm not a head coach, and thank God for that, as I've said many times. Um, yeah, very, very interesting season that Sydney had goalkeeping wise. Uh, yeah, let's hope they've sorted it, but I'm not hoping too hard, because I will never hope for Sydney's success. Ever.
Well, there's only going to be one way to find out if they've solved the goalkeeping problems, and that is wait for the A-League Women season to roll around. But we'll continue on the goalkeeping thread, Burke, as we head to France.
Yeah, many things have happened to the French recently. One of which was, I'm sorry, I'm not calling them by whatever their stupid name is now, Lyon, have signed Tegan Micah, which I think is a really exciting signing. I think she should get more game time there than she has with Liverpool, provided, of course, she stays healthy and uninjured and not concussed. I really highly recommend that Tegan Micah stay not concussed. Um, I recommend most people stay not concussed, but especially her. Especially her. So hopefully she'll get to see some game time during like the cup games and random other fixtures that they have where they don't necessarily need, the strength and skill of Tian Endler. Yeah, I think that's a very exciting move for her. It'll be interesting. I wonder how well she'll pick up French. I wonder what her accent will sound like. Um, so yeah, Lyon have lost one Le clean sheet player in Ellie Carpenter to Chelsea, but they've regained a Le clean sheet player in Tegan Micah. In other news of things that have happened to the French, because I can't resist a good segue opportunity. The poor French, I shouldn't say poor, the French have lost another quarterfinal on penalties. I think this is like the 10th tournament in a row, something like that, that they've lost in quarterfinals.
They can't get
And
past the quarterfinal stage.
I don't know who cursed them, but if they're around somewhere, if there's like an Etsy witch or something that someone got to curse them, I'd love to shake their hand. Because this is so funny. It's so deeply funny to me. RIP and peace to the French and the chicken. We'll see you next quarterfinals, I guess.
Yes, they're forever cursed to make the knockout stages of tournaments, but then get
And
knocked out
never go
in the
further.
quarterfinals.
Oh,
It is insane.
yeah, obviously not about Australian football, but like I said, I can't resist.
You had to work it in somewhere as well. And Burke, will stick with you for this one. Melbourne City have re-signed some players as well.
Melbourne City have re-signed some players. Obviously, first one I'm going to mention happened a while ago, but it's a very good sign for good things happening at Melbourne City. They've re-signed Taylor Otto, the American. As we were just saying, we're losing players to America. Very good to be keeping one. She's been a huge part of City's defence. And speaking of City's defence, they've also kept their keeper in Melina Mires. Again, I know how to talk. I'm on a podcast, which is good. A great move from them as well. They've re-signed captain Rebecca Stotts, which I was always expecting. I can't really imagine Melbourne City football without Rebecca Stott. And they've recently re-signed Letitia McKenna on another, I think, 2-year contract, and just announced the re-signing of Leah Davidson on another 2-year contract. And most importantly, they're keeping Holly Mack for one more season, at least. At least. The Women's Asian Cup, Asian Champions League, that's the one, will have yet another round of Holly McNamara running at them. And I, for one, look forward to it greatly.
I have like a little theory here that part of the re-signing of Holly McNamara is that they're going to lose her in like January, February, like they have in the past, and they get a transfer fee for her.
Don't say that. Don't speak that into the universe. I'm knocking on wood. Do not. Don't do that to me.
All right. Well, in which case, then I'll move on to the last transfer story that we want to cover here today. And it's not a transfer re-signing story so much as it is a lack of transfers or signings. And that is a lack of news out of Canberra United, because we haven't heard anything, as far as I'm aware, since Michelle Heyman dropped that bombshell after the Matildas played Argentina in Canberra, that she had spoken to the new owners and that it was on the APL to announce what was happening in regards to ownership. And that was almost 2 months ago. That was like the 2nd of June, and we're the 22nd of July as of the time of recording. So a little bit under 2 months ago, and Matildas have also played another 4 games since then in that bumper window. So a lot of time has passed since those comments from Michelle Heyman. I did send a request for comment to the APL for an update on the situation, and as of the time of recording, I have not received a response. I mean, preseason's only 2 months away, Burke. Players not being announced as having been signed, no update on the ownership as a whole. I mean, are we going to be looking at another situation where Canberra United are just kind of getting the players that haven't been wanted by other clubs? And don't get me wrong, they did incredibly well with what they had last season, and and the season before that to an extent, where they're sort of in similar situations. But you'd also want to be able to go out and get the players that you want as a coach, rather than being like, okay, who's left? Who do we get?
Who's being picked last for the team? Yeah. I want to say, like, no news is good news, right? Right? It's not. It's not good news. I'm very scared. Canberra United, please show signs of life. I am begging. Please.
If you know CPR, please make your way to McKellar Park, and the whatever the form of Canberra United is at McKellar Park, and please, chest compressions, bring them back to life.
If they have a defibrillator on site, please use it.
Yes. Yes. So hopefully, in the coming weeks, we'll have some news on that. But the closer it gets to pre-season, the more concerned I am. We're going to be looking at an 11-team A-League women competition next season. But in happier news, Alex Epakis has named his 23-player squad for the AFC Under-20 Women's Asian Cup qualifiers. These games are taking place in Tajikistan on the 7th of August, the 9th of August, and the 11th of August. Those are Australian Eastern Standard Times. The 7th of August is a 3 a.m. kickoff against the host nation, Tajikistan, who are hosting this qualifying group. August 9 at 12 a.m. Midnight, so August 8 to August 9 against Palestine, and then August 11 again at midnight, so August 10 into August 11 against Taiwan. No broadcast details as far as I'm currently aware, but the 23-player squad consists of Alexia Apostolakis, Amelia Bennett, Tegan Bertolicio, Jasmine Black, Millie Borton, Indy Breyer, Maddie Caspers, Amelia Casar, Sian Dewey, Sophia Fante, Tiana Fuller, Sky Helmerick, Isabella Hoyos, Zara Kruger, Grace Kulamu, Maya Lobo, Alona Mele, Avani Prakash, Sienna Silvesca, Ruby Sullivan, Kaylee Talon-Hanika, Peter Trimmis, and Talia Eunice. Burke, any names from that list that stand out to you?
Well, the first thing, stacked. This roster is stacked. And I think like a good 90% of it is A-League women's players. So that slays. Love that there's a couple of players that have made Matilda's debuts as well, senior players. And I think it's really good that players have been able to get the experience of what it's like at the top flight, and they'll be able to bring that with them to the under 23s. Obviously, Alexia Apostolakis, icon. Has anyone noticed that I'm a fan of Alexia Apostolakis? I hope not. That would be crazy. What? Very good to also see, I think, Avani Prakash. She's a great, great young player. And yeah, it's always exciting seeing her on the pitch and on the ball for Western United, that is. And I mean, yeah, you could argue a case for any of these players. Sienna Silvesca, obviously, I think it'll be good for her to be out there again. Yeah, just stacked.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it was something like it's 19 or 20 of the 23 players are currently either contracted to an A-League women's side or were contracted as of the end of last season. Like, it's absolutely insane how many of I think Jasmine Black, Millie Borton, and Sky Helmerick are the only ones that are either not currently contracted to an A-League women's side or weren't contracted last season. Jasmine Black was, so yeah, not currently contracted to an A-League women's side, which is absolutely insane. Player I think that stands out the most for me, I've already talked about Sophia Fante, so I'm not going to do that again, lest this become the Sophia Fante show. But I am sticking with NPL New South Wales. What a shock.
What?
Poletti praises an NPL New South Wales player.
That's crazy.
And that is the player currently leading the NPL Women's New South Wales Golden Boot race with 19 goals. Sky Halmerick, she is absolutely lighting up the competition for NWS Spirit. Believe she has been kept off the score sheet in the last couple of weeks. I know that the last game I had a look, or I saw them up close against Bulls FC, she was kept off the score sheet. That was, I want to say, 2 weeks ago off the top of my head. But yeah, she's almost at 20 goals. She was the first player to get to double-digit goals this year. She's absolutely shot out of the gates. Only 17 years old. She's, she's absolutely ripping the competition apart. An incredibly young, talented player, knows where to be, isn't afraid to drop back into midfield as well when needed. And I'm certainly not the only one with this thought process. It's only going to be a matter of time until she's named as being contracted to an A-League Women's club. She will be an A-League Women player this year. I'd almost be prepared to put money on it at this point. Like there is a club that will sign her to a contract. She's natural goal-scoring talent, and so I'm hoping that she can do quite well, during the Asian Cup qualifiers. But that won't be the only national team in action during that time period, as the under-23s side will be in action at the ASEAN Women's Championship in August. We'll be representing Australia at the tournament, which will be held in Vietnam from the 6th to the 19th of August. It's not the first time that Australia has sent an under-23 side to this competition. Combank Matilda's assistant coach Joe Palacides will lead the under-23 team. Will be supported by Matilda's technical staff member James Slavesky and former junior Matilda's technical staff member Fate Chambers. It's an 8-team tournament, 2 groups of 4, and the top 2 from each group will go through to the semi-finals of the competition. The under-23s will be in action against Myanmar, the Philippines, and Timor-Leste in their group action. Obviously, no squad announced as of yet, Burke, but the under-23s are back in action.
I'm very glad to hear that. I think it's really great that our under-20s and our under-23s are generally quite active. I think it's really good to be getting all of the best young players around each other, just because, if you can find some crazy chemistry there, I'd love to see it transplanted into the senior team when the time comes. But I think it's really good to get this kind of experience for the younger sort of players, even though, you can be Matilda at this age. I think we definitely need to be doing more of the youth sort of football in a national sense, because it only helps for the future. So yeah, excited to see what squad ends up named for this. And yeah, hopefully we can watch it somewhere. I'm going to assume it'll be on YouTube, but we will find out.
Yep, broadcast details not announced for that either. Joe Palacides, for Palacides, the emphasis is on giving players meaningful international exposure within a structure that mirrors the Matilda's senior environment. It has been a while since the under-23s have been in action as a squad. I don't believe they've been in action since Tony Gustafsson departed as coach, which was over a year ago now. So, definitely a program that, we see it as... I hate having to keep going back to the United States here, but, they do an incredible job at continuing, development into the under-23s as well, replicating that senior environment so that way, players are ready. If they're not ready to step in, straight out of the under-20s, they might be ready to step in out of the under-23s. Otherwise, you're looking at players who don't get like as soon as they turn 20, that's it. Their international experience is over until they earn a senior call up, and that depending on the depth, it could be 5, 6, 7 years away, and they've been out of that environment then for so long that they don't get that sort of continued experience, I guess. And that's not to say 3 or 4 years out of the environment is different, but getting to play high quality internationals is something that can be worked on. And I think of someone like a Sasha Grove, who's yet to feature for the senior Matildas, an incredibly talented player. She gets a chance to showcase at this under 23 tournament, continue that high quality international environment, might give Joe Montemuro something to look at as another depth piece in the fullback position. But speaking of developing talent for the future, the Emerging Matildas Championships were held in Sydney last week at Valentine Sports Park. Were previously the National Youth Championships, and the Emerging Socceroos tournament was held in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago as well. In the under 15 Emerging Matildas Championships final, New South Wales Sky secured back-to-back titles at the tournament with a dominant 4-1 victory over Northern New South Wales in a tournament that also featured under 15 Malaysian side as well. And I believe the men's tournament had the same replication as well, with the under 15 international Malaysian side in there as well. In the under 16 championship final, Victoria Blue took out that particular game, scoring the only goal against New South Wales Sky in the entire tournament in a 1-0 victory through Alexis Pantazopoulos. I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of this tournament. I had hoped to, particularly given it was held, at Valentine Sports Park, the home of Football New South Wales, and not too bad of a drive from my house. But my bank account had other ideas. But I do know that there was plenty of incredible young talent on display at this tournament, including some NPL women's New South Wales talent I'm quite familiar with. But yeah, for those who watched it, I know that they were treated to some exciting football, Burke.
Yeah, good for Victoria, once again, proving who the best state is. I believe there are also a couple of NPL Vic women's players out there as well, which is crazy to think about because this is under 15s and under 16s. Why are you there and also in NPL? What is going on? Yeah, I think these kinds of tournaments are really cool. And yeah, I hope they can, I want more of this stuff happening. I want more football happening. What? She wants more football happening? That's crazy. What?
Yes, but on that note, I will say we have discussed this particular player before on the podcast. Madison Habila, I called her NPL women's debut starting this, kicking off this season for NWS Spirit, a 14-year-old right back. She was in action at this tournament. But one name when the squads were announced that actually took me by quite so much surprise that I had to sit down was Claire Corbett. Now, why this name took me by surprise in particular is because I mentioned earlier that that 6-1 loss the MacArthur Rams had to the Northern Tigers. She scored the MacArthur Rams' lone goal in that game, but she was also just controlling and dominating the midfield with incredible poise and skill, and she was in the under-16s squad for one of the New South Wales sides for this tournament. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean this player is not even 16 yet and she's dominating NPL women's midfields? This makes no sense. Why? How? I feel old. Holy crap.
I think the other thing that's really kind of exciting about all of this youth football, even when it's like under 20s, under 23s, it really shows how much football has progressed. Because I remember even when I was younger, you'd hear about like people going to play like for state basketball or whatever, but it was always mostly boys. Like I don't recall, I had maybe a couple of cousins that were playing netball, state netball, but you didn't hear about this kind of thing happening. And so I think it's a really positive sign for the future of football in Australia that we have these kinds of tournaments and these kinds of opportunities for young players to get to show what they're made of. So yeah, I do hope we get to see more and more of this kind of stuff in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully next year I'll be able to watch a lot more of the tournament than I did this year. But we're going to head to NPL land now. We're actually going to go to your neck of the woods, Burke. Something that took us as a little bit of surprise before recording. Former Melbourne Victory striker, midfielder, centre back, and fullback Tiff Eliadis was named in the NPL Victoria Women's Team of the Week as a goalkeeper. What?
I wish I had more information for you about this one, but I didn't actually see the Bulleen game this week, which I'm kind of mad about now. I think I'm going to have to go back and watch. That's truly bizarre. Good for her. Good for her. Truly a woman who can do it all. Yeah, you always like you hear about people like players being like, oh yeah, they can play as a forward, they can play as a fullback, like they can play wherever. She really can. She really can play wherever. Wouldn't you love to have that kind of a
Yes.
player on your bench, being like, yeah, she can be a goalkeeper. She can also be a striker. Like, jeez.
Yeah, just name her in two spots. Name her as an outfielder and a goalkeeper on the bench. Just have two jerseys ready to go.
Yeah,
Who needs six spots on a bench? Nah, just have
not
five, and
not
you've got
Bulleen.
someone who can just do both. Also in NPL Victoria women's football, Avondale have earned promotion into the top flight. At least that's the socials say that they have earned promotion. I believe it is to the top flight. I'm not too sure what the naming conventions are of the competitions down
It's a
there in
nightmare.
Victoria. But Avondale have been promoted, Burke, and both their men's and women's teams will be in the top flight next year.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. I think the promotion relegation sort of thing in the NPL is really interesting. And it does kind of, keep you on your toes. I do think it's a lot more balanced in these kinds of like lower, not lower, like lower tiers. You know what I'm saying. Like relegation doesn't really work in like the WSL in England, for example, because of the money disparity. But here in these kinds of leagues, it does work. Like you do find these teams can stick around in the top flight for quite some time if they, you know, play their cards right. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see another or a new team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I've watched a lot of Avondale, but I do know they put a lot of investment into their teams,
Yes.
so presumably that will continue into 2026. I don't really want to end on a very sad and unfortunate note, but I kind of don't have a choice, Burke, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, so as most people, especially in Victoria, would have heard, unfortunately, one of the NPLW clubs in Heidelberg United lost one of their players, Keely Lockhart, a couple of weeks ago. She passed away. And I just wanted to take a minute to talk about her and her impact on football in Victoria because I actually knew Keely, obviously not like the best, but I did know her. I did an internship with Heidelberg United a few years ago and met her and got to know her there. Um, she was just a fantastic player and an even better person somehow because she was really, really good footballer. Um, I remember going to one of their Nike Cup games. I think it might have been against South Melbourne, where she played pretty much the full game with a chipped tailbone because she got into a collision with the goalkeeper and then kind of just refused to sit down or sit out or be subbed. Um, yeah, she was deeply, deeply loyal to Heidelberg and loved football. She was a coach actually for a lot of younger squads. Um, in at Heidelberg, and yeah, she made a huge impact on the pitch and on the entire club, really. Um, yeah, she was part of their championship winning squad last season. She was the one who actually scored the equaliser for them to pull them back into the game. I was at that game as well. I wrote about it for Football Victoria. You kind of had like, she was one of those players where you knew if something was going to happen, she was going to be the one to do it. And she was. So yeah, it's a really horrible loss for Heidelberg, for football, for her friends, and especially for her family. Yeah, she'll be greatly missed amongst the football community here in Victoria. And yeah, just if you're struggling in any way, shape, or form, you should absolutely reach out to someone. And yeah, uh, I hope she can rest easy now, but she'll be greatly missed.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that wonderful, uh, everything you just said, Burke. So I think that's where we'll end this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Roundball Australia podcast network. We don't know if we'll be back next week or not. Timing is a wonderful thing, particularly with a lot of football going on at the moment. So we'll be back when we can for another full length episode. The Asian Cup draw is taking place next Tuesday night as well, so we'll try to do something around that if we can once that has been announced. Again, be sure to stay tuned to the Dubcast YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. We're hoping to have some fun stuff coming out over the next few weeks as well. So keep an eye on that. But again, I really didn't want to end on such a negative note, but I think may Keely rest in peace. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Goodbye.